And here we are. Welcome, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. This is Stuka Joe. And we're directly from San Juan, Puerto Rico. It's 9:04 p.m. We got 16 valiant souls that are here to witness the demise of the Ottoman Empire. Yes, because if you were following the game yesterday, things could have not gone better. Well, thanks to one of my subscribers, specifically Captain Von Ondine, alerted me to a specific turn where the Turks had only 2 actions and I took 5. You know, you get carried away, you know, with this video equipment and moving the camera around it, you kind of forget things. So we're going to correct that. Fortunately, it didn't have an effect on play. So I want to give thanks to Captain Von Ondine. So I created a banner here. I'm going to put it there. Thanks for alerting me. And that is at 30:30 in the first video. So let's see who we have today here. We have our first viewer, E4 Airman. He was lined up before the show. New York Raider fan. John McGuinness, Francisco Javier Ruiz Gomez from Spain. Bendover, Michael Mellon, Charles Latora, R. Cadet. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And of course, Captain Von Ondine. And let's see if we have anybody else. No, that's it for now. The people had posted any comments. So let's correct the situation on the board before we begin this turn. So let's go to the board. I took 5 actions instead of 2. We did an offensive against the Caucasus front and the Mesopotamian front, which were successful. We're going to let those 2 stand. So those would be our 2 actions. And what I did was I placed a resource marker, which that cost 2 actions in the naval theater. So I will return that resource marker to the stockpile. And the other thing that I did was to place that gun emplacement here at Yildiz. So we will take that one out. We'll take that one out. And that way there's no impact on the game. So we're still good. And really, if I would be responsible, we should sue for peace right now. The Ottomans never had it this good. But of course, we're not going to do that. So let's go to the next turn and see what happens. And if any of you guys see me screw up any rule, just post your comment in caps. That has a better chance for me catching it. So let's go to the next card here. Let me set up the base here. And our next card is Bulgaria joins the Central Powers. That doesn't sound too bad, right? Bulgaria joins the Central Powers. So it reads, Bulgaria entered the war on behalf of the Central Powers in October 1915, lured by German promises to restore their prior borders. Although Bulgarian forces won victories against Serbia and Romania and occupied much of Macedonia, the war soon became unpopular due to economic hardship and dislike of fighting as allies with Muslims against fellow Eastern Orthodox Christians. And in September 1918, when a multinational Allied force broke through on the Salonika front, the Bulgarians sued for peace. So that is the flavor text. Now let's take a look at the effects of this particular event. And we see that there's no event during this turn. We have advances by the Mesopotamia front and the Sinai front. So let's do those now. The Mesopotamia front now advances, and this is the one that we have to keep an eye on because it's the hardest one to push back, to Ctesiphon. And the Sinai front, still the pipeline has not been fixed, so now they will attempt to move into Gaza Beersheba, and they have to roll less than the combat value of 3 with 1d6. And they do. So the British are at Gaza, and that puts some pressure on the Turks, because now we have 2 armies. You see them there, Mesopotamia and the British at their, well, Mesopotamia is still at their 4 box. So it's not as bad as it could be. So let's take a look at what else is in the card. Forgot to register it here. So we have one action, only one action. So we could use it to push that Mesopotamia army back, but it has a lower chance of success. The Russians are at their starting gate, as well as the Arabs. So we only have one shot. We have this marker from last turn, which all offensives against one front, we get a +1, and that's a good idea to use when this army, which is the most dangerous, has advanced around here, and we have 2 or 3 actions. Then I would use this. So this is the Asia Corps. That's the contingent of Germans that were fighting in this front. So we're not going to use that now. So let's push back the British. And why? Because that pipeline, the absence of the pipeline is still working for us, but it doesn't apply if they're called to advance into Jerusalem. So we have to roll higher than 3 with 1d6. That's going to be our sole action. And it's a 5, and that's a success. So they are pushed back to El Arish. So that was a nice attack. And the national will, which is at 3, is not affected. So that is the end of that card. And we go to the next card. Let's see what that card is. And this one is Turkish Mine Lane. So let's take a look at the flavor text here. See, I can capture also the picture there. And in November 1914, after the bombardment of Sedul Bahir by the British Navy, the Turks began fortifying the vulnerable narrows against fleet action. The foundation of the Strait's defenses was a series of 10 minefields containing a total of 370 mines. Unbeknownst to the Allies, on the night of the 8th of March 1915, the Turkish mine layer Nusret laid a line of mines in Erin Koy Bay. So let's see what the effect of this card is. And we have that we may immediately place a minefield marker for free if available, but it has no effect because we already have our 2 minefield markers. We've placed them already. So we have advances by the Arabs and by the Russians in the Caucasus. So the Arabs are advancing for the first time under Faisal. You see them in their 6 box, and now they move to their number 5 box, Hejaz Railroad. And the Russians are also on the move. They're still with their weakest commander there, that 2 commander, which is Dashkov. So they move into Sari Kamish. And we have 2 actions, but we get a +1 to offensives versus Mesopotamia during this turn. So I think that's a no-brainer. We should use at least the first action, to see army back to its starting point at Ctesiphon. So the first action against the Mesopotamia army, you roll 1d6 and a 1. That's a failure. So we're going to use the second action also. Let's see how we fare. We need higher than 4, and this turns a complete fiasco, and that is a failure. So that was a 2, that would be a 3 with that +1. So that's the end of that card. National Will is still at 3. So let's get rid of that card, and we go for the next card. And the next card is Gadar Conspiracy. Let's take a look at what that means in terms of the event. Let's read the flavor text first. Early in the war, the Germans attempted to foment revolution in British India, working with radical nationalists in the country, the Gadar Party in North America, and the Indian Independence Committee. Germany launched a plot for a large-scale mutiny of Indian troops in February of 1915. The plan failed miserably, as British intelligence had successfully infiltrated it. So let's see what the effect of this card is. It's a coup in India. We weren't able to guess India. If you remember from the previous turn, we had moved our intelligence bureau for the East to the Persia box. So we're going to execute that coup in India, but it's very unlikely that it will succeed. So we place the India coup marker there. And you see that it shows a 5. So that means we have to roll higher than 5 to succeed. Anything else is no effect. But if we succeed, that goes to our victory box. So we need a 6. A 6 would be nice. Here we go. And the roll is a 1. So that is a failure. And we remove the India coup marker for the game. So that was that. And now we have advances by the Arabs, the Gallipoli front, and the Caucasus. Okay, all 3 fronts are active, so they will be advancing. And we start with the Arabs. They now move to their number 4 spot, Aqaba. Now we move the Gallipoli front for the first time. It moves in the game, and Hamilton is now going to move to the number 3 spot, which is Anzac Cove. And now we move the Russians. And the Russians move from Sarikamish to Van. And we have a total of 2 actions. So let's take a look at the situation from afar here. And we have the Russians are in their number 3 spot. If they enter the number 2 spot, we lose 1 strategic, 1 national will. The Russians are the easiest ones to push back. The Gallipoli front is also pretty easy with that too. So we have 2 actions. Let's try to push the Russians back. Hopefully we'll be able to push them in this first action. So here we go. And the roll is a 6, and they are pushed back to Sarikamish. Okay, so that was good. So we have 1 more. Of course, the most dangerous of the fronts is that Mesopotamia front, but we wouldn't have a +1. So do we want to push them back or push the Gallipoli front? The Gallipoli front is also adjacent to a strategic space. So let's push the Gallipoli front back. So we have our second and last action against the Gallipoli front, and that is a 2. It's not higher than the rating, so that is a failure. And that is everything for that card. We still have 3 Turkish national will points. So let's remove this card. And now we bring on the next card. And the next card has a yellow background. Landings at Salonika. So this is going to be another front that is going to be activated. So things are getting nasty very quickly. So let's take a look at the color text here. In October 1915, Allied forces landed at Salonika in northern Greece in an attempt to forestall the conquest of Serbia. While the operation failed in that respect, it remained an active front for the remainder of the war. This was extremely awkward at first, as the King of Greece, Constantine, was very pro-German, while his Prime Minister, Venizelos, was pro-British. So let's take a look at the effects of this card. And we have to activate now the Salonika front. And it is on the Sarail side, which is a 2-rated commander, and we place it in Salonika. So we have here the Salonika front, and here we have the marker, the Sarail side. We place it here in the number 4 box. So now let's see what else happens with the card here. And I disactivated this again. Okay, so here we go. Now we have an advance by the Caucasus front. So the Caucasus front, the Russians advance a lot in this game. They're in Sarikamish again. They move to Van, adjacent to a strategic space. And we have just one action. So one action is, that's tough. One action, it should be either the Gallipoli front or the Russians, but the Russians have moved a lot. So I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to say the Gallipoli front. Hopefully the Russians won't be activated the next turn. So let's try to push back the Gallipoli front. We need 3 or higher. So here we go. And 5. So the Anzacs go back to Cape Helles. And that is the end of this card. The national will is still at 3. So next card, let's see what it is. There's a lot of cards in this deck. It's another midday card, Armenian Massacres. And yesterday somebody asked me about a card that talked about the Armenian Massacres. I didn't know there was one. This is it. So let's take a look at what the text says. On the night of the 24th of April, 1915, the Turkish government placed 200 Armenian community leaders in Constantinople under arrest. Thereafter, the Turks began a massive systematic program of extermination, initially couched in terms of deportation, but in reality including mass executions and death marches in the Syrian desert, making it the first genocide of the 20th century. Okay, so let's take a look at what events occurred during this turn. There's no events, but there's 3 advances: Gallipoli, Salonika, and the Sinai. So let's take those in that same order. It's a good thing that we pushed the Gallipoli front back. So we start with the Anzacs, advance into Anzac Cove. We have now the Salonika front, opened recently, and it advances from Salonika to its number 3 space Monastir. And we have what I didn't, well, yes, we have the Sinai front, and it was a good thing we pushed it back because now it has to venture again, trying to enter that number 4 space because the pipeline is not in place yet. So the British need a 1 or 2 to enter Gaza. And the roll is a 6, so they fail, and they are back at El Arish. And we have 3 actions, but it says no offensives against the Caucasus front in this turn. And the Caucasus front is one of those fronts that is adjacent to one of our strategic spaces. So we have 3 offensives, but not against the Caucasus front. So I would take the first one always with respect here against the British here at Mesopotamia. So we have the first of 3. Let's try to push them back. So here we go. We need a 5 or 6, and that is a 1. That is a failure. And I don't want to burn all the offensives there because we have other armies to take care of. We have another situation here adjacent to, in Gallipoli, to a strategic space. So our second action is going to be taken there. Try to push that army back. That is the bare minimum, 3. So the Anzacs are pushed back to Cape Hells. We have just one action left. We can't use it against the Russians. We can try to push the Arabs back, which they should be fairly easy to push back since Lawrence is not their commander yet. So let's go for it. Our third and last action. We need 3 or higher, a 3. So that's good. See, if we would have gone for the Mesopotamian front, it would have failed. So we pushed the Arabs back. So it was a pretty efficient use of these 3 die rolls. We succeeded in 2 of 3. So let's take a look. That's the end of that card. National Will, still at +3. So let's remove that card and we go to the next card. And like yesterday, we're going to play for 1 hour. If the game ends before or during that hour, that's it. If it continues, we continue tomorrow at the same time. So let's see. This card is Italy joins the war. And notice this cross that you see there. Here it is. Italy joins the war. This cross that you see there, that is used if you're playing this game together with Habsburg Eclipse. It's a special rule, and I think you ignore the event or something. But now this event will take place. And let's read the colored text. On the 23rd of May, 1915, lured by Allied promises, the Italians enter the war against their former allies. Shortly thereafter, and lasting into the fall, the poorly prepared Italians launched the first battle of the Isonzo, hoping to seize the town of Gorizia. While the Italians outnumbered the Austrians by more than 2 to 1, the offensive was a complete failure, which inspired the Austrians to attack. So let's take a look at the events that we have here. And we have an event, resolve the Italy joins Eastern Theater off-map battle. That is an Eastern Theater event. So we have that one here. Italy, I think it's this one. So Italy joins the Eastern Theater. The Eastern Theater is the one that we beefed up the last time. It has 2 resource markers, so we're solid there. So that means we have a +2 die roll modifier. We need a final die roll of 4 or higher for another victory, which would bump our Turkish national will to 4. So we roll 1d6. A 1 is always a failure in this game. So that is 1 + 2 is, well, it's not a failure. It's we add 1 + 2. That is 3. So in that particular case, that would be a stalemate. So a stalemate, we place this marker. It would have been a failure if we would be during an offensive. But this is the resolution of an off-map battle. So we have our first stalemate, which is Italy joins. Stalemates have no effect on national will. So our national will marker stays at 3 for now. So now we have advances by the Arabs and by the Salonika fronts. So the Arabs, they're in their number 5 spot, and they advance once again to Aqaba. And now the Salonika front advances into Lake Dorian, a strategic space. So we have to now mark that here in our strategic and our national will track with the temporary marker, which is the one in color. We place it in the number 2 box. And at the end of this turn, if we don't dislodge that French army in the Salonika front, our national will go down to 2. Okay, but we have 2 actions. So I think this is a no-brainer, at least for the first action. We need to push the French back. Unfortunately, that commander is not too tough. It's a 2, so we roll 1d6 and we need higher than 2. And the roll is a 5. So the French go back to Monastir. And we now adjust here the marker once again. So we return that colored marker to the number 3 box. And that was our first of 2 actions. We have one more action. And we have the Russians adjacent to a strategic space, as well as the French. I think the Russians are not going to advance in the next turn. Something tells me maybe the French again. So let's try to push the French back to Salonika. We have our second action. We need higher than 2. So here we go. That's a 1. So that is a failure. So that's the end of that card. And now our national will is at 3, so it's still solid. So now we remove the card and we go to the next one. And this one is one from the first epoch, Enver to the front. So this one is about Enver Pasha. Enver Pasha was one of the young Turks who took control of the Ottoman Empire through the Committee of Union and Progress. Insisting on taking personal command of the army, Enver led an invasion of the mountainous Caucasus region at the height of winter in December 1914. The result was, what do you think? A resounding defeat for the Ottoman forces at the Battle of Sarikamish, involving over 50,000 casualties. And we have the effects here. No event for this turn. We have advances by the Caucasus and the Sinai fronts. We have 2 actions, but both of the actions have to be used against the Caucasus front. So let's do the advances first. And the advance by the Caucasus front is now into Erzurum, a strategic space. So now we have to adjust our national will. Goes down from 3 to 2. And now we have also an advance by the Sinai front. So good thing the pipeline card hasn't come out. So we've been taking advantage of that pipeline card all the way. So it's trying to advance into Gaza. And the British need 1 or 2 to advance. And they get it. So they advance into Gaza. And let's take a look at, we have 2 actions. They have to be both against the Caucasus front. And that's pretty timely because the Caucasus front is the one that captured the strategic space of Erzurum. So let's go with our first of 2 actions. And it's a 6. So the Russians are pushed back to Van. And now we go to our second offensive against the Russian. That's our last action, and that is equal to the combat value, not higher. So the Russians stay put at Van. And the national will now is finally adjusted, and it's been reduced because of the capture of, we pushed the Russians back. So, we pushed the Russians back, so we should be at 3, right? Yeah, we should be at 3. I think I screwed up that. Let me see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 minus 1, 3, and there's no strategic spaces right now. Yeah, so it's at 3. National will is at 3. No strategic spaces. Yeah. I think it's better if we just use 1 marker then. We're at 3, and whenever it changes, I'll just move the marker. I don't know why it brings 2 markers. Okay, so we're at 3 national will. And that's the end of that card. So let's go for the next card here. And the next card is a midday card, Suvla Landing. So let's read the color text. This has to do with Gallipoli. Determined to breathe new life into the Gallipoli offensive, additional British forces were landed at Suvla Bay in August 1915. Sir Frederick Stopford, a poor general, was chosen for the landing and doomed the success of the venture when he delayed his advance until artillery could be brought ashore. This lethargy led to the defeat of the attempted breakout at Anzac Cove. So let's see what the effect of this card is. And we see that if it is on the map, we flip the Gallipoli front to the Gallipoli post Suvla 3 side. So that is better than what's currently in Gallipoli. So we see that the Hamilton side is now not in effect. We flip it to the other side, the post-Suvla side. And we have advances by the Caucasus, the Gallipoli, and the Sinai fronts. So the Caucasus front again into Erzurum, capturing our strategic space there. And now strategic will is down at 2. We have an advance by the Gallipoli front from Cape Helles into Anzac Cove. And we have an advance by the British. And now there's no pipeline or absence of pipeline to stop them. So they advance into Jerusalem, the number 3 spot. Now things are starting to get pretty nasty here. As you can see, we have 1 unit in the number 2 space, the Russians 2 in the number 3 space. And luckily we have, we have 2 actions, so it's not a lot of actions. So let's see how we spend these actions. It's obviously going to be to push some forces back. And we see there the British are adjacent to another strategic space, Damascus. But we have to push those Russians now, and especially now that they're at a strength of 2. Grand Duke Nicholas hasn't come in yet. So now you can see the camera. I was moving the camera around. Let me show you. This is the situation here. We have the Russians are at number 2. The British in the Sinai and Gallipoli are at 3. So we have 2 actions. First one's going to be against the Russians, and the roll is a 4. So the Russians go back to Van, and our national will is increased once again to 3. So we have 1 action left, and we try to push the British back here. Now, they're adjacent to strategic space, so are the Anzacs, and the Anzacs are now with a strength of 3, so they are a more formidable force. Let's go for the British here in the Sinai front. Let's see if we can push them back to Gaza. It's our second action. We need higher than 3. And the roll is a 5. So the British go back to Gaza. And that was our 2 actions. And strategic will is at 3. That was that card. And we bring the next card also, a midday card, Sinai pipeline. So that's the end of the absence of the pipeline for us. So let's read the colored text. British operations into the Sinai were continually hampered by difficulties with transport and supply. In 1916, the British made considerable efforts to construct a rail line and water pipeline to facilitate an advance into Palestine. After building up supplies for an offensive at the end of the year, on the 8th of January 1917, British forces succeeded in capturing the Gazan town of Rafah. So let's take a look at the effects of this event. We have a new epoch. So now we shuffle the dust cards into the deck, and if not on the map, we activate the Arab front. The Arab front is already activated. So it remains for now with Faisal Hussein in command. And it says place him at Jeddah. That is good because he's, right now the Arabs are, I think in the number 4 box. So let me register this here. So we shuffle the deck and we place the pipeline complete marker in the cyanide pipeline box. Let's do that now. So we have, let me see if I can find that marker around here. The pipeline marker. Let's see where that is. Oh, here it is. We have the pipeline marker here. The pipeline is complete. So we place it here in the cyanide pipeline space. So now the pipeline is complete. And we have to shuffle the cards. But I'll shuffle them after I finish the turn so I can see what the actions are there. So we have advances before the advance, let's move the Arabs back to Jeddah. And Jeddah is that space that reads cars. And for some reason, they printed this game. As you see there, cars is the number 6 Arab front space, and also the number 5 Russian space. I think the Arab space is an error, so that's a bummer. So now let me see one thing here, because the way I read this is that if it is not on the map, you activate it and place it on Jeddah. So I think we don't even move this Arab front at all. It stays where it is because it's already on the map. So that's the way I read that. So it stays there. I won't move it back. And we have advances by Gallipoli and Salonika. So the Gallipoli front advances into another strategic space, Chunuk Bair. And that moves the national will down to 2. We have an advance also by the Salonika front. And the Salonika front advances into Lake Toiran. And that's another strategic space. So now national will is at 1. Not good. And we have a total of 1 action, 1 whopping action. Who do we want to push back? We want to push back a lot of people. The French at Salonika are a 2 army. That would be easier to push out and gain that point. But the Gallipoli army is a more formidable force. oh boy, it's just 2. Let's push back that Salonika front so we don't have to worry about it next turn. Next turn, we'll try to push back that Gallipoli army there. So we only have 1 action. Here we go. And that is a failure. Yesterday, if you saw the video, I had tremendous luck, and it's the complete opposite now. So now what we will do is we will shuffle the cards. We'll remove this one. We have the remaining cards here. And here there are cards from the first 2 epochs, and we will mix those cards with these cards here. And these are the remaining cards in the game. I think there's like 40 cards here, so unless our luck straightens out, the game's going to end before these decks of cards are exhausted. So let's see if luck can at least normalize. Well, it tends to normalize itself. Yesterday was really extraordinary high numbers. Okay, so now we go to the next card. Let's see what that is. And it is from the midday deck. It reads, Wasmos in Persia. So let's take a look at what this is, because I have no clue. In February 1915, Wilhelm Wasmus was dispatched in an attempt to convince Iran to enter into an alliance with the Central Powers. The attempt, while showing initial promise, turned into a complete fiasco. While Wasmus succeeded in causing some southern tribes to revolt, he also lost the German codebook, which fell into British hands. Boy. So let's see what the effect is. We have a coup in Persia. And why is that good? Because in Persia, we have our intelligence bureau for the East there. That's where we moved it in the last video. So now we take the Persia coup marker and we will place it here. And now we have a +2 die roll modifier. And if it's higher than 5, we cause that coup in Persia. That's a victory. So let's see. Here we go. The roll is 6 + 2, 8. So that is a victory. The coup in Persia takes place. And we place that coup in Persia marker here in the victories track. You see all the victories we've had. We have a total of 5 victories, 1 defeat, and 1 stalemate. So, very pleased with that. We have advances in the Caucasus and at Gallipoli. And at the Caucasus, the advance is again into Erzurum, a strategic will space. Now, the coup in Persia, I forgot to move the marker, increased the Turkish national will to 2, but now the capture of the loss of Erzurum returns it to 1, okay? And also we have an advance at Gallipoli. And this one really is concerning because now that is in the number 1 box. If it advances again, we lose the game. So let's see how many actions we have. 2 actions, and they're all going to have to be to push back that Gallipoli army. And we don't have any re-rolls or anything in this game, just to let you know, just in case we lose in the next 5 minutes. These markers that you see here, if there's a specific event, I think it's in the German Intelligence Bureau or something like that, that allows us to use these, burn them up, use one of those for like an additional action. So those would be like emergency actions, but we don't have that alternative for now. So we have the die roll here. We have 2 actions. We need to push those Anzacs back. So here we go. First die roll is a 3. That's a failure. Oh, this game may end now in the next turn. And the next die roll, a 1. Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. So that's that card. That was very unfortunate. So we remove that card, and hopefully we won't see advances in Gallipoli in the next card. So we flip the next card, and it is forcing the Narrows. No advance in Gallipoli. Okay, so we can calmly read the text. And it states, the Gallipoli campaign was originally conceived as a purely naval operation. The fleet would penetrate the Bosphorus defenses and seize Constantinople. On the 18th of March 1915, an Allied fleet entered the Narrows in hopes of effecting the seizure of the Turkish capital by sea. Because of some well-placed mines, the fleet began to suffer significant losses and retired. So let's take a look at the particular effect of this card. And this card has the longly awaited resolve the forcing the Narrows campaign. And for that, we use that marker that you see there, British fortitude, to measure the times that the British get hit by coastal defenses. They can only absorb 4 hits, but we also use that Royal Navy marker in order to move the Royal Navy as they go along in the straits here in the Narrows. So let's go to the Narrows map. So here we see the Narrows map. This is one of the aspects of this game that I really like. It's like a mini game. We place the British fortitude marker. We have it here. So we place it here. If it goes down to 0, the British withdraw. And that, it says there, 1 victory point. It's not one Turkish national will. It's a victory point that has an effect in determining the degree of victory if you win the game at the end. So we have our Royal Navy marker. So normally it would start here, and it would start in this particular space to face the guns of Sedul Bahir, but those are destroyed. So we move them. We move the British Navy to Kum Kale. And they're going to continue until they suffer 4 hits, or they don't suffer 4 hits and enter Constantinople. So now we roll for Kum Kale, and just to make sure we have this correctly, the interpretation. Let me just check one thing here. Kum Kale will hit if they, let me see here. Okay. Place the British fortitude, yes, blah, 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 okay. So we compare the die roll to the indicated Turkish defense battle value. If the result is greater than the defense value, there is no loss to the British fortitude. If it is less, that defense's battle value reduces British fortitude by 1. So we need low numbers here. We need, if it's less, if it's equal or less, it says, let me see, if it is equal or less, it reduces the British fortitude value. So here we go. Come on, Kum Kale. Kum Kale rolls a 3. So Kum Kale failed in reducing British fortitude. So the British fleet now goes to the minefield. And now we need 4 or less to cause 1 hit on the Brits. And the roll is a 3. So that's 1 hit. So British fortitude now goes from 4 to 3. But the British fleet now continues, and it continues into Yildiz, but there's nothing there, so nothing to roll against. Into Dardanos now, and nothing to roll against. And then it goes into the next minefield here. And let's roll to see what the effect on fortitude is. And the roll is a 4. It's 4 or less, and it hits. So British fortitude now goes down to 2. This is going to be close. This is going to be close. So now the British go against the battery in Kanakale. I think we're going to lose this game here. We need 2 or less. Here we go. And the roll is a 3. So the British advance into the Kanakale space. They go now into Nagara. And now they go against Constantinople. Constantinople has a 4. Let me see one thing. Did I do this right? The value is less. That defense value, yes, there's no loss. Yes, this is gonna, if the British fortitude mark has not reached the 0 box, I think we're done for. So because the British strength is 2, we roll for Constantinople. The roll is a 4, so British fortitude is 1. And now the British have entered Constantinople. So, yes, I think you have to beef up the defenses a little more than I did. So we've just lost the game in the narrows display. Wow. That beefing up of defenses is important. We have to place these guys. And look at these guys. I mean, they're not 4s or 5s. They're 3. These are all 3s. Oh boy. So the British capture Constantinople and the game is over. And this is 53 minutes into the second video. I thought we were going to continue more with more action. Look at all the cards we had left here. Had a lot of cards left. So, if you play the game, beef up that narrows display. Of course, that card, forcing the narrows, is a card that comes in the second epoch. But you saw in our video that these cards were mixed with the first epoch cards very quickly. I think like halfway through the first deck, we had those cards mixed in. So that should be like a top priority, beefing up those defenses. So I think we kind of neglected that there. We did beef up these off-map resource markers, and I think it paid off because we went 3 victories, 1 Western, 2 Eastern. There was 1 defeat and 1 stalemate. So we did pretty well on the victories track. We never got to use the Asia core. Never got to use it. I had it in reserve in case that Mesopotamia front was in a number 2 or number 1 box. So that is what she wrote here. Pretty unimpressive defenses here. We have Meandering Mike. Welcome. And see, Michael, the Ottomans were notorious for taking extra turns. Yeah. And we have Stephen. You're falling from Vancouver. I'm sorry to say. I thought it was going to get 1 more video in. So that is that. Spain, it's 3 a.m. Javier, Francisco, what are you doing up so late? So, okay, E4. And we have also here William Arenz. William, I hope you catched it early on. And we have the infamous Deploribus Rex also. So we got a lot of people here. How come this didn't scroll to the bottom? General Sorrow. I'm sorry, General Sorrow. We're done for here. So, the beginning of the peace to end all peace, the Versailles Treaty. Yes, we have here, I think this one ended prematurely. So, let's see. This game, well, I don't think it gets into, it ends in 1918, this one. So, Ataturk appears, and maybe I'll do a next, later on a video with the optional rules. There's optional rules for Ataturk here. Mustafa Kemal. There's a plethora of optional rules. You have for Mustafa Kemal, you have, well, this was a starting national will. Let's see what the Gaza Beersheba fortification, you're allowed to fortify that space. That would have come in handy. This one, I have no idea. Dunster Force. These give us +1s, and these serve to block Sinai or Mesopotamian advances, but that's a card that never came out, so we never got to use that. Let's see what this is. This one comes in, another card, War Wariness, that it gives us a -1 die roll modifier for all these off-map offensives. And we never got to play the Kaiserslack offensives. Those, once the card is played, we resolve them. And for example, you could have, let's say, 3 victories, 3 defeats, and then you start resolving randomly until they are all victories and they are all defeats. And that reflects the desperate German offensives during the last year of the war. Of course, you see there the Americans. So there's a lot of detail in the game tied to historical events, which I like. The cards are not seeded. There's other, I think the one about the English Civil War has seeded cards, so you have to place certain cards at certain intervals within the deck so that you have closer to historical results. But I don't mind this arrangement with the 3 epochs. I think it works well. I mean, I like the division into epochs. One full deck would have been too random. So we have Charles Latorre. It is a fascinating game and underrepresented. Now, one thing I'm going to say is this version is okay. I wish they would have made the cards a little bit, how do you say, the font a little bit larger. It has a typo here. This obviously is not cards, so that's pretty sad, because this is not a, this is not a game with 2,000 pieces and 5 map boards where you can be more forgiving. But it's a nice production. You can play it together with, maybe I'll do a playthrough later of Habsburg Eclipse. But I really enjoyed this one, so I hope that you enjoyed what we were able to play here. And I like the States of Siege games. I mean, for when you don't want to burn your brain, it's nice. And it's always a nail biter, and they're always hard to win. If they would be easy to win, you wouldn't be tempted even to play them. Okay, so the Arabs, we never got to see Lawrence of Arabia. We never got to see them. So I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up. We had 27 people in this this particular broadcast. Zulus on the Ramparts is another nice title, yes. So let me see here. Yes. So thanks for showing up. Oh, Daniel Silverthorne is there. And we also have Steve O. You like Ottoman Sunset, yes. So easy to play, yes, that's right, but challenging. It's a challenging game. So got a lot of comments. Dale Brady. So thanks to all of you. So with that, I'm going to leave you for now. We've been at it for 1 hour. I was hoping for another video, but I was pretty negligent at the narrows. So next time, beef up those narrows, people. And like I always say, no, I haven't played Cruel Necessity yet. I have to play that one, but I think there's a new edition out, right? I should get the new edition. Hopefully well, let me check out, is it by Worthington or by Victory Point Games? Because if it's by Worthington, I'm sure the print, the font in the cards is going to be large font. So I'll check that out, but I should get Cruel Necessity. I have the Victory Point version, but I never played it. But it's also very highly regarded, a States of Siege game. With these games, what happened was, as time progressed, the designers would make more like subsystems into it. And I like, for example, the Narrows display here is nice, the Gallipoli display. So they made more like sub-theaters and games within the game. So that makes it more interesting. So I think that's what happens with Cruel Necessity. Was designed by John Welsh, who also designed Levy and Mass, which is the French Revolution. Levy and Mass is an older game, so it doesn't have all those like other theaters, not as many as Cruel Necessity. So thanks to all of you. It's Worthington. Okay, thank you, St. Louis Keith. So I will be seeing you in the next one. So thanks to all of you, and this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next one, guys. Bye.